Bless you.
Okay, so here we are on this week's book study call on the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So I have not been a part of this. Megan's on a trip, and she asked me to fill in for her. And I'm really glad that she had me fill in because these two chapters were really awesome. I actually needed to hear what was in these two chapters, so I'm pretty excited about it. I'm going to make some changes. So I know I'm about to go back and reread the book. It's been a while since I've read this book, but anything with John Maxwell is excellent. It's just he's just very, very good at what he does. And so these two chapters were perfect for me. So far, it's just Linda and I on here. So this might be a super fast book study tonight. Maybe not. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk the whole time. There's a lot in here. But one thing I'm just going to say, I'll say it now and at the end of the call, is this week is chapter 17 and 18. And then next week is going to be the last three chapters all into one. So you catch this, anybody catches this recording later, I know some people watch the recording. Just the next week will be the last three chapters. So let's get started with chapter 17, the law of priorities. The law of priorities. I like to start, a lot of times I like to start with a story. I love to tell stories. And it was a couple of years ago, and I'm trying to think. It might have been last year, 2021. It might have been last year. And I noticed that I was getting stressed out, like really stressed out. I noticed that I was clenching my jaw a lot. I was just under tension, and I really couldn't figure out why. There was really no trigger. There was nothing going wrong or negative, but I was just under a lot of stress and just tension, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so what I started to do is I started to write out, okay, what does my day look like? What does my week look like? My month? What's going on with my schedule? Maybe it's something with my schedule. And what I started to see was that I was on, I think at the time, 8 different volunteer boards. And that's on top, that's like all the volunteer stuff on top of all the things I'm supposed to be doing. My family, my wife, my business, my health, and all that other stuff. And so I started to see, okay, makes total sense. I am overextended. And so what I did was, I don't have it with me, but I just took a notepad and I just started writing out, okay, what are my priorities? What are my top 5 priorities in life? Because I have to start getting rid of stuff. And I did. I started getting rid of good things, international ministries, and boards and people just doing good stuff, but I just didn't have the time to do it. And some of those things weren't a priority for me. So I had to just start axing stuff and just boil it down to my top 5 priorities in life. And this is what those top 5 priorities started to become. It was the first and foremost was myself. I started to prioritize myself 2 years ago. I was about 44. It took me 44 years. I've shared this before to learn to prioritize myself. And, because we have this idea that everybody and everything else is a priority except for me. And then we end up not taking care of ourselves. We don't take care of our mind or our physical body or our spirit or any of those things. And then we end up getting tired and run down. But I'm serving people, right? And like he says in here, don't confuse activity with accomplishment. So we are always had, so I had this idea like, well, if I'm just doing it for everybody else, then that's just what I'm supposed to do. I don't subscribe to that anymore. The best way for me to help people is to be the healthiest version of myself. And then I can really help people. I can help them from a position of abundance rather than just kind of whatever's left over. And so I started to prioritize myself. I became a priority in my life. What a concept, huh? And life has been better, since I started to do that. So myself is a priority. My wife is a priority, my marriage. My children is number 3. And then my business and just personal finances is number 4. We just live in that sort of on that sort of a planet. So we have to take care of our money. And then number 5 is our communities. And so the communities that we're a part of, whether that's church, whether that's at the Christian school where the kids play sports, just those different communities that we're a part of are a priority too, but they're number 5. And I have those at number 5 because if the top 4 aren't taken care of, I really have no business going outside of the home and prioritizing anything else. So this thing of priorities, this law of priorities is something that I personally have done and am doing. And it's really helped my life. And so when we go over this, it's been really good for me the last couple of years, and I'm going to reevaluate my priorities after reading this. I don't think any of them are going away, but I need to just kind of take a look at things and how I'm spending my time. But he talks about on page 208, he realized he needed to sit down and reevaluate his priorities. And I think that sometimes maybe in a business or in relationships or whatever, just seasons of life, things change. And sometimes that priorities can change, as our kids get older. They're still a priority in general, but how they're a priority in our life, it's different. So you have to, when you have a 5-year-old, you make them go to bed at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Well, when you have a 17-year-old, a lot of times they don't like to start talking until 9 o'clock. So like you have different, just the priorities are just different. And I think it's the same with our business. Excuse me. I'm still on the tail end of this silly cough that just won't, like this eternal cough that I have going on. But yeah, so I think that's one thing is that we should do in light of our business or just in light of life, really, is to sit down and reevaluate our priorities and what's important to us, and what God's calling to us to, because he may be moving us in different directions or whatever. What do you have as far as on the chapter on priorities, Linda? What stuck out to you?
When I read about that shift that he made when he decided to move,
Mm-hmm.
and how much time he picked up by doing that was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big shift to totally move where you're at. But I think when you're in leadership at his level, it's worth it for the time that was saved and freed up.
Yeah.
To be able to spend that in what he considered his priorities.
Right.
So
yeah. He said he gained
270 days.
270 days over the 10-year period that he gained.
That's crazy.
He gained 27 days a year, almost a month he got back
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
just in travel, and
Right.
and he said, and I think this is interesting in light of leadership, is he says it would not be an easy move, but it was a necessary one. And I think,
Mhm.
and that's what leadership does, is leadership says, listen, we've been going this direction, and it's served us well, but we're going to make a shift and we're going to go this way. And here's why. It's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. And like you said, with him, just the time he got back, it was huge. So, certain areas of life where we can gain time back, um, is huge. Is huge. Another thing he said on page 208 was leadership, at the very top of 208, the last sentence in the first paragraph says, but leadership has nothing to do with comfort and everything to do with progress. And so I guess that's a question as leaders that we should be asking, is how are we progressing? Are we progressing? Or have we gotten comfortable? And I would say in 2022, for me, I personally, in my own personal business, I have gotten comfortable. Not necessarily on purpose, but I, just I've allowed myself to be busy with a lot of things, but a lot of things that aren't moving the needle necessarily. So it's time, definitely, as I'm going through the end of the year and into the beginning of 2023, really to reevaluate, what am I doing and why with my Plexus business? What do I want to accomplish, and how am I going to accomplish it? What will be a priority for me? And as we'll talk about in the next chapter, what am I willing to sacrifice to get it? And so, I've had a lot of things for me personally, as my points have gone down. They're down 1,000 points. I was at 3,500 points, down from which once was about 5,000 points. And so you have then you have these thoughts that come through. Well, I could just, I could start a concrete business, but then you start weighing priorities. Okay, now we're back to, I love to work. I mean, I'm not afraid of that, but then I go back to, am I willing to give up all of that time when I can just start doing again the things that got me to Diamond? And so, and yes, it's a sacrifice. Yes, it's going to take a lot of work. I'm going to have to give up a lot of things for it, but it's worth it in the long run compared to pouring concrete, and so so this was the perfect timing to read this.
I think that's why it's so important to reevaluate from time to time, whether it's yearly, at the mid-year point or whatever.
Yeah.
Just to take a look at what's serving you, what's not serving you. Because I would say I've been comfortable a lot of the year.
Yeah.
And haven't looked as closely as to that as I should. And I've been looking at it more lately, and just realizing, okay, I've got to start doing things differently to move ahead. And I've had not the same thought, but a similar thought when I'm tired of working the business and I don't feel like it. Well, I could quit and just stop doing it.
Right.
But every time it comes back to, I felt like God gave me this as a gift to support missions and different people.
Yeah.
So has he taken that away? No, he hasn't. So the reason I would be quitting is because I'm being lazy and I want to do something that I think is going to be easier. And
Right.
that's not a good answer or the right reason to quit.
Right. And I'll be honest, and we've done this now for 7 years. It's been an absolute it's been a blessing beyond our wildest dreams. And
Mhm.
I have reevaluated, like, even, to be honest, even Plexus in general. Like, am I okay? So am I where I'm supposed to be? Okay, maybe I'm not. I'm, just evaluating things, but
Mhm.
God has not moved me.
Mhm.
So, and I'm where I'm supposed to be. I just need to go back to doing what I'm supposed to be doing, in light of
Right.
my Plexus business. And I'm excited. These chapters really were, they were really a real encouragement to me. And yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for the next thing within the business, because it is about progress, and it is about moving forward, not getting comfortable. And just to touch on what you just said on 209, he says every year I spend about 2 weeks in December reevaluating my priorities. And he looks at it, the previous year's schedule, upcoming commitments, evaluates his family life, thinks about his goals, looks at the big picture of what I'm doing to make sure the way he's living lines up with his values and priorities. And I think that that's just like you said, I think that's extremely important. Instead of just keep flying by and allowing time to just keep flying by, just to stop and consider, are we on the
Yeah,
right?
and depending on how the year has gone, what you did last year isn't necessarily going to be the right plan for the following year.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm already reevaluating my approach in 2023. And so I'm excited about it. I'm excited about that. Another thing that he talked about on page 210 was that leaders should get out of their comfort zone, but should stay in their strength zone. Wasn't that good?
Yeah, it's underlined.
Yeah. I underlined it in Megan's book, so sorry, Megan, but I marked these 2 chapters all up tonight. But I think that's important. I think it's important to grow and to be stretched and to learn new things, but typically the things that are in our strength zone, we're passionate about them. We're excited. We want to, they're fun to do. We enjoy doing them. And I think that is important.
Well, and that's part of having a team, because
Mhm.
there's other people on the team that are going to have different strengths, and maybe they can take care of certain things that you're not as talented at, or that might take you twice the time. So focus on the things that you do well,
Mhm.
and then utilize the team for the
Mhm.
things they do well.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think we can go further faster if we learn how to do that.
Mhm.
One thing I wanted to mention on that before we move on. He talks about his 3 R's. These are the guidelines that he uses when he evaluates his priorities. The 3 R's. He talks about what is required, what gives the greatest return, and what brings the greatest reward.
Mhm.
And I think that those are worth looking at when we consider, our priorities and our schedule and our time and all those things. I think that those were some really good guidelines to use, and just good questions to ask. What's required of me? What is something that is required of me to do that I can't delegate? Like, I have to do that. Like, I think that's important. And then what gives the greatest return? And he talked about delegating, just things that you can delegate, whether that's in our situation, having the kids do the dishes. Do they do it as well as we do? No. Do we break dishes? Yes. We broke 4 plates last night and a glass. And so it's like, but they do it good enough, and they're learning. So we can delegate some of those things. They're cleaning up the kitchen tonight while I'm in here. So it's, we can't do it all. And I think it's the same way even in our business. What can we do? What's our strengths? What do I have to do that I can't delegate? And if there's something else that I can delegate, then, one way we can delegate in our business, and I think this is greatly overlooked, we try to create everything from scratch that we can use, but the corporate office has so many tools that we can use. There's so many videos that are happening, so many meetings, so many that we can be plugging new people in, that we can be plugging Spanish speaking people in, we can be plugging people in from different countries. Like, that would be delegating, that would be something that we could do, and that would give a greater return if we use those things. We don't want to just be full of activity. We want to be accomplishing something. And that's one thing. When I was in charge of road construction projects, there were some people that could run certain pieces of equipment. Maybe it was a bulldozer or an excavator or something. And some guys would just zip around all day long, and you think they were in a race, and they accomplished some stuff. But then there were other guys that weren't as fast, but they didn't have to be, because every move with the excavator had a purpose, and it was to set you up for the next move. Same thing with the bulldozer. And they were always the older guys, right, that have been around a while. It was always the younger guys that were just going crazy, burning fuel, and usually getting themselves in trouble somehow. But the older guys, every move just made it was amazing to watch. Really, it was beautiful to watch. It was a master of their craft. And I think that we could be that way in our business, whether it's on reach outs, whether it's on posts, like very intentional in how we do stuff, the way that we connect with people, the way that we plug people into, whether it's a team event or a corporate event or something like that. But just making all of our moves count, I think, is important. And then the last thing of the 3 R's, he says, what brings the greatest reward? And I think he talks about personal satisfaction. He says, life is too short not to do some things that you love. I love teaching leadership. I love writing and speaking. I love spending time with my wife, children, and grandchildren. I love playing golf. No matter what else I do, I will make time for these things. They are the fire lighters in my life. They energize me and keep me passionate, and passion provides the fuel in a person's life to keep him going. I think it's key to prioritize the things that we love to do. And I don't think I thought for 44 years, I thought that was selfish. And I don't believe that anymore. Now, if I were to golf all day, every day, and then not do other things, yeah, it probably would be. But what are those things that we enjoy do that really light our fire, that really excite us. And it's interesting. If those are the things that really inspire us and get us out of bed in the morning, then we have a reason to be doing the business work. Then we have a reason to be doing, this is why I want to hit my goals in Plexus or with my Plexus business. Why? Because of these people, because of these things, because that can give me the time and money I need to spend time with those people and those things that I love to do. And so I think it's important to identify those things that we really love to do. And so anyway, good stuff. You have anything else on the law of priorities, Linda? You want to share with everybody?
I just had underlined activity is not necessarily accomplishment. And there's been seasons where I'm very busy doing a lot of Plexus stuff, but I'm not doing things that really grow my business. I may be doing too much training without taking action. I'm
right.
Scrolling through Facebook too much, looking for ideas of what to post and wasting too much time. So things like that, where I could be sitting in my office for 3 hours, but when I'm done with the 3 hours, what did I really accomplish? Not a whole lot. So I'm trying to prioritize more the things that move the needle and not wasting time.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's something that we all can, look at. How are we spending our time as we tackle these things that we call a priority? I had a good friend, and for like 10 years, he wouldn't get together with me. He's like, man, you're a great friend, and I just want to spend some time with you. And eventually, over time, I was like, no, you don't. I said, if you really wanted to, if I was really a priority in your life, we would have gotten together. The reason that you don't get together with me is because I'm not a priority in your life anymore. Well, that's not true. I'm like, but it is. Like, it sounds bad, right? But it's true. By your action, you can't tell me I'm a pro. It's kind of like, I love going to the gym. Oh yeah, did you go today? No, I haven't been in 5 years. Well, then you don't love going to the gym. It can't be a priority if there's no action taken to do that thing that we say it's a priority. We know it should be a priority. I know I should exercise. I know I should eat the vegetables. I know I should on and on and on. But when it comes down to it, comes down to the action, if we're not doing it, then it's really not a priority. Even if we think it should be, even if we want it to be, it either is or it isn't. Like my father-in-law says, he says, we are what we do, and all the rest is religious talk. And so, yeah, you are what you do. And so, like I said, so as we go through and make up these priorities, it shouldn't be what we know they're supposed to be. Really, what is, if we look at our day and look how we actually spend our time, we spend our time on the things that matter the most to us. So I was talking to a guy. I'll plug you. Got anybody on here that on this or watches this? I'll plug you in with him if you want. But one of the things he does is coaching people to help them hit the next level in their businesses. Is he makes them do on the hour accountability calls, and they have to give an account for what they did in the last hour. It's intense, yeah. And so,
no thanks.
That's what I said. I said, I'm good. Because I'd be convicted probably about how I spend my time. And so he said, yeah, he said it's very intense and it's very hard. He said it's even hard to coach. He said, but we really start to get down to what their priorities are and why they are where they are or why they're not where they say they want to be. So I could see it being extremely beneficial. I'm just not ready to tackle that quite yet.
Beneficial, but very painful, I think.
Right. Oh my. Okay, well, we're going to move on to chapter 18. Chapter 18, the law of sacrifice. There's some excellent stuff in here for sure. What stood out to you, Linda? What's some things that stood out to you in this chapter?
I didn't know that much about his history and kind of how smart he was, being able to skip grades and went through things so much quicker than others at that age. And then also just what he went through and was committed to in the midst of the threats and being put in prison and people being so much against him and what he was trying to accomplish, that he wouldn't back down at all, even when his family, could have been in danger and got threats and everything. He still stood his ground and was willing to sacrifice for what he thought was more important.
Yeah, and he just kept moving forward, kind of like we talked about a little bit in the first chapter tonight. He kept moving higher, kept moving. I mean, he probably could have been a success staying at the very first pastorate that he took at the Baptist church in 1954. He probably wouldn't have ruffled any feathers. He probably would have had a successful career, a safe, comfortable, happy, middle-class family. But he kept climbing higher and higher and higher, sacrificing more and more and more and moving forward in his leadership role. And he could have stayed, in that first position, but he wouldn't have impacted. He knew that his call was more than that. And he kept moving forward, even with all of the threats and eventual murder, assassination. But he's still impacting people today. And so, and I think that that's what leadership does. Leadership, we keep moving forward. We don't get comfortable. We keep moving forward. And if you're going to go up, what do you say? If you're going to, leaders must give up to go up. And that's something that I've learned in Plexus on the pursuit of the rank of diamond, is that it's different things for each rank. Maybe you might have to give up. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's things like that. But sometimes you have to give up a piece of yourself. You have to learn or unlearn things, in your leadership role to move up. And what you do to go gold, or what you do to go emerald, or even what you do to go sapphire, it's different when you go diamond yet. There's a lot of some of the same things, but you have to grow your leadership lid. And you have to learn how, to talk on Zooms and on stage. And then there's a lot of there's a lot of different things that we have to learn before we go to the next level. Yeah, but the greater the leader, the more he or she must give up. And I think that's one thing that's overlooked in leadership a lot of times is it's like, well, the leader, they don't do anything, all these things. It was the same way in construction, I'd have guys like, yeah, I'd like to be in charge. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And I said, are you sure about that? Oh, yeah. I said, well, okay. I said, it's not necessarily as glorious as you think it is. Why is that? I said, well, you get here at 7. And they're like, yeah. I said, I'm up at 4 o'clock checking the weather. And then you go home at 5 and I get home at 7 or 8. He's like, oh, yeah, I don't like that. And I said, and you're talking about, you're thinking about shoveling that little pile of rock right here and right now. He's like, well, what are you thinking about? I was like, I'm thinking about what we're doing 2 weeks from now. Like what we're doing today, I thought about 2 weeks. I planned for 2 weeks ago. Like we have these ideas about leadership, and some leadership is bad. I get it, but there's more sacrifice than we realize, in leadership. It's not all cover on the being on the cover of a magazine and on a beach with, Megan's diving for some conch shells or something in some island in the Caribbean, and so people see that and they're like, well, yeah, I'd like to be a diamond. Well, yeah, that's not on the daily schedule to go, eat the fresh seafood. So, and I think there's a cost of leadership, and a lot of people aren't willing to pay the price for leadership. And it was that way in construction too. And it's that way in Plexus. It's that way in anything. Most people, and I've heard people actually say this, I'm not willing to pay that price. Which is fine. You don't have to, but you're not going to get there either. And so that's what, even in construction, some of the guys were like, well, I'm not willing to do all that. Well, then go back to shoveling your pile of rock, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that, but there is a cost to leadership. And I think this talks about it on 222. He goes through about 4 different things. And the first one is there's no success without sacrifice. And this is in any area of life, whether it's our physical health, our walk with the Lord, our finances, our relationships, our Plexus business, whatever. There is no success without sacrifice. And if there is, it's going to be very short-lived success. Like it's just going to come and go because we don't have the discipline to maintain it. It just, so another thing he says here is leaders are often asked to give up more than others. And I think that's, I have found that to be true. When you become a leader, you lose the right to think about yourself. And so I have learned that. I used to think the leadership roles, if you just get in a leadership role, man, you've made it. Like, and in some sense you have, but you learn pretty fast that it's not about you. And if you're going to be a good leader, it's really not about you, it's about others. In the Army, I learned this, and then you have to learn to take care of the troops. And you got to take care of your troops. And then that is the essence of leadership in the military, taking care of your guys. And so I learned it there. I've learned it in construction. It's the same way. You got to take care of the troops. And then the same way in a family, you got to take care of your troops. And it's like, so it's this essence of leadership it's the same no matter what area. And then Plexus, you got to take care of your troops, and it's hard even in Plexus too, because it's an all volunteer force. Like they can leave whenever. They're not employees. My kids can't go anywhere, right? In the Army, they couldn't go anywhere. In road construction, they couldn't go anywhere. Plexus is a little bit different because they can just leave or not message you back. And so what I found here too, you have to take care of your troops before a problem. And, instead of waiting until they take 8 BioCleanse and have a major problem, like we need to take care of the troops ahead of time. And just something I've learned, and you have to sacrifice, and so it's like, when you go to like a convention or something like the annual Plexus annual convention, it's one thing that Megan and I started to see when we started having success in Plexus is we made a decision early that even if we're the last one to leave a room, we're going to talk to people. Whether they're on our team or whether they're not our team, we're going to make time for people, because we saw it done the opposite way by some diamonds long before we were diamonds. And we made a commitment all those years ago. I said, and I told Megan, I said, when we're diamonds, we will never treat people that way. And we haven't. And what I've learned is like things like convention are a lot of work. So you sacrifice a lot of time and a lot of sleep to be in that position. But my thing is, if you're in a leadership position, you have a responsibility to give people your time. You have a responsibility to hold that title well, and to because a lot of people, I was really not convicted, but one time we were at a convention and there was a long line to get into the arena, and we had our lanyards on, and we got to go kind of not to the front of the line, but to a different line where we didn't have to wait in line. And as we were walking through, everybody was staring, and the gravity of the position of leadership really weighed heavy on me as I was watching people watch us. And I thought, we have a responsibility to succeed because there's a lot of people watching us, and we have a responsibility to wear this lanyard and this rank well, because there's a lot of people that would love to be in this position. And we shouldn't take it for granted, and we should be nothing but grateful, and we should just be very careful, in those positions of leadership. And whether it's Plexus or anything, really, we should be very careful. But it does take sacrifice to be in leadership. The next thing is you must keep giving up to stay up. And it's true. He says today's success is the greatest threat to tomorrow's success. It's kind of like, I always go back to Rocky Balboa, because I feel like the Rocky series has so much you can learn about. Tons of stuff. Like there's so much to learn in Rocky, but he quit training. He got all excited, and he got caught up with all the lights and the fame and the fortune and all the stuff. And then he went into the ring and he got destroyed. he didn't stay up. You know, he quit giving up, he quit sacrificing, and he got beat. And it wasn't until he went back to work and he went back to doing the things and doing the dirty work and all those things and sacrificing and giving up of himself that he got the title back. And it's the same way in any position of leadership. It's ongoing sacrifice. And there's always a cost in moving forward, always a cost. The last little piece he says is the higher the level of leadership, the greater the sacrifice. Kind of like Martin Luther King, what did he give up? Everything. His very breath. He gave up his very life. You know, so the higher the level of leadership, the greater the sacrifice. Have you ever noticed the highest level of leaders in world history have all been killed? The ones who have had the most impact? John F. Kennedy, right? Martin Luther King, Gandhi. I think he was killed, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure, maybe.
I think so.
I mean, if you think about all of these, Abraham Lincoln, right? Jesus, like,
Yep.
you know, we go right to the top of the list. And so the greater the leader, the greater the sacrifice. And he says here, in the end, only one person is willing to pay the high price that the item actually costs. It's the same in leadership. The higher you go, the more it's going to cost you. And then I think if that's what people want to do, they want to keep moving up in light of their pursuit of leadership or rank or whatever in Plexus, that's great. But this is where the priorities come in. This is where I think the priorities are extremely important, because there are certain things that you have to sacrifice to win or to lead or to be successful. But there are also certain things that you won't sacrifice to get there. Like there's things I won't sacrifice to get there. And my marriage, my testimony, like there's certain things I will not give up, but I will give up sleep. I will give up time. I will give up a lot of things to get there, but there are certain things. And I think that's where these two chapters, it really comes in handy, because the priorities and the sacrifice are, I think, hand in hand. Again, there can be no success without sacrifice. He says that several times in this chapter.
I like what he said when he said, as you rise in leadership, your responsibilities will increase and your rights decrease.
Yeah, right.
Kind of a good mantra to keep in mind and expect that that's how it should go. That's normal.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, your responsibilities, they increase. And to some level, sometimes you get a target on your back. People will watch you. And so they're watching, okay, what's the leader going to do? What are they not going to do? You know, and so I'm not saying that we should live for other people, but anytime you're in leadership, it's a responsibility. It's a stewardship, and we should steward it well. Let's see. Okay, so the last couple of things, we got a couple minutes left here on the application part of this chapter, chapter 18. It says, to become a more influential leader, are you willing to make sacrifices? Are you willing to give up your rights for the sake of the people you lead? Give it some thought. And I think that's important. I mean, we're not going to cover all this here, but as you watch this and as you read this, give that some thought. Am I willing to pay the price? or what price am I willing to pay, right? He says, talks about create two lists. One, the things you're willing to give up in order to go up, and two, the things you're not willing to sacrifice to advance. Be sure to consider which list will contain such items such as your health, marriage, relationships, children, finances, and so on. That sounds exactly like my top 5 priority list, doesn't it? Because it used to be, to me, my top priority in life was just work. I did that for a long time. That I knew all the other priorities and what they were supposed to be, and I'll never sacrifice my family for everything else, but I did. I did for I don't know, 13 years. So, I mean, we learned a lot through all that, but that was my priority in life. I think I'll just stop on that first one. I think that's a key. What am I willing to sacrifice to go further, to go higher? What am I willing to give up, and what am I not willing to give up? It's important to take a look at both of those things. So, Linda, you got anything else on either one of these chapters?
No, I don't think so. The whole book has been very good, better than I anticipated, and I feel like I've learned a lot. I think maybe before we started on the book study, I had the idea that either people are kind of born leaders or they're not. And now I'm realizing, no, you can, even if you don't have that giftedness or those qualities, you can be trained, you can learn to be a very good leader. So that was kind of eye-opening for me and encouraging.
No, I agree. I think that's true. And I don't think people are born leaders. I don't believe that. I think that some people have an advantage to leadership when it goes back to their youth, their childhood, maybe how they were raised, maybe how they spent their time, maybe things like that. But as far as born leaders, I think people just got started earlier on leadership, whether they realize it or not, than others. But I don't think there are born leaders. I think they're created. They're made. Leadership is made. So anyway, so that is all we got for priorities and for sacrifice. 2 excellent chapters. Thank you, Megan, for having me do this, because those were both perfect chapters for me to read, to prepare for tonight. But next week, remember, is the last week for the book, and Megan will be back. I think she has it. I'm not sure. Or I don't know if she'll be leading it or somebody else, but the last 3 chapters of the book are going to be covered next week. So, guys, I hope you enjoy it. Linda, have a great night. I'll see you on Thursday.
Yep, I'll be there.
Sounds good. See ya.
Thanks, Justin. Bye.